Delighted today to be joined by the director, writer, and producer of Tribe, Dan Asma. Dan, how are you doing?
Very good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on and speaking to us today. Congratulations on Tribe. I was lucky enough to get a screener and gave it a watch, and I'm a big found footage head, so it was right up my wheelhouse, and I really, really loved it. So well done, I suppose.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. I do. I feel like um I I know it falls within the genre of found footage, but I
Mm,
know it also kind of deviates from it at several
yeah.
different points. And so I worry a little bit about like real genre fans might be like, wait a minute, this isn't pure found footage. But I don't know.
Mhm.
We were having fun, and so we decided to kind of we decided to push it a little bit outside of just what you would catch on a video camera or kind of a security camera or anything like that.
Mm. I think it's that you have the elements of the kind of. Yeah, you have found footage elements. You have, I think, is it they call it like screen life as well, where it's
Yeah,
done over different sort of different media, as well as yeah, almost like theatrical elements to it as well.
yeah.
So for yourself, this is your directorial debut. How was it being behind the camera for that first time in this aspect of it being your kind of big feature, your first feature? Sorry, as a director.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. Like I come from a marketing background. I helped
Mm,
co-found a company called Buddha Jones, which in LA is kind of a premier agency, and it does mostly well, it does a great deal of horror marketing, and we've been a part of some
mm,
really big campaigns over the past 10, 15. The company's 20 years old. And
mm,
so we were and so working within the genre of horror is something that I feel like we've been doing for so long, but from a marketing standpoint rather than kind of
yeah.
storytelling, it's more about trying to sell these films, try to get people excited about them, and get people into theaters and such. And
Mm,
so obviously being a big horror fan myself and kind of living in that space for most of my career, the idea was, hey, listen, we've been selling horror movies for so long. Well, we should be able to kind of actually direct, produce, and kind of do our own horror movies.
mm,
And so that's where kind of some of the motivation came from, was the idea like, look, we've been looking at working on some of the best horror films of the past couple decades. It just feels like we could give crack on and doing it ourselves. But I don't think it's very different, obviously, because it's kind
mm,
of a low budget. It's very much a kind of a it is a found footage film, but it does deviate into these weird elements of kind of screen life. And then it also goes kind of internal at times. So it was interesting. It was a lot of fun. I mean, obviously there's always stress when you're trying to make a film, but I think a lot of it was really kind of um, falling back a little bit into kind of the world that we know. And so we felt confident that what we were doing was not only going to work from a genre standpoint, but really kind of work in the sense of like an audience who's going to kind of enjoy these tropes, whether it be kind of the either those paranormal activity tropes or those Blair Witch tropes, all those ideas of kind of what's going on, what can you see and can't see, and really having fun and playing with those different elements within the horror genre.
mm. And with the kind of story of Tribe for those watching, what would you give as your sort of summary for it to summarize it for the viewers?
Yeah, well, so it's basically about a guy who's kind of recently retired, and he finds out that a friend of his from years ago who's passed away, he's left him something to kind of pursue and investigate to try to find out the mystery of how this guy passed away. And
Mm,
so it becomes almost like kind of a breadcrumb story. This guy slowly starts to discover, based on these videotapes from the past, what essentially happened to his friend, and this kind of world opens up to him, which is he wasn't quite ready for. And
mm,
as he enters into that world, he starts to really kind of lose his mind because you realize that we're living in a number of different dimensions. And so,
Mm.
or this character he's pursuing, um, we don't really know what happened to this guy. So we're trying to, is this guy coming? Is it a ghost story, or is this kind of in some interdimensional kind of play going on? So, but I wouldn't want to say any more than that.
Yeah, yeah, understandable. There is lots that we could talk about if it was a full spoiler interview we got, but I want to keep some of the mystery there for anyone that's watching.
Yeah.
So how did the story of Tribe develop for you? Obviously, as you said, you've had the working in marketing for horror. How was it that this came about, the story?
So interestingly enough, it kind of it evolved organically out of a series that we were doing for YouTube and for social media. And the I
Okay.
for so the I where it came from was we were we were used to the kind of theatrical experience, or the narrative experience, which is, in my opinion, fairly passive, right?
Mm,
Meaning you either go to the theater and you see a film, or you're watching it on TV or a streamer or whatever it is, and you're passive through that experience, even if you get kind of excited and you're activated into it. And I found that, what social media offered was this kind of whole different experience, which is kind of more of a real active experience with either the creator or the storyteller. And so we had come up with this idea of a character, who was like the host of a YouTube show. And the name of the show was called In Search of the Tribe. And so we would go out and we would shoot these kind of very Blair Witchy, meaning we were totally playing it for real. Like, this was
mm,
absolutely no question. This was really happening. This guy was in search of, kind of, like a prehistoric tribe of people who like had lived kind of below the radar. And so we were putting this together, and part of it was like, okay, look, this is kind of an experiment. Let's see what happens when we try to put this together. We put this out
mm,
online. Obviously, I'm sure there's a huge online audience for kind of, cryptozoology and Bigfoot, and all the
yeah,
people love this stuff, right? They love it.
yeah.
And so we thought, well, look, what if we try to play this straight and see if we can get people actually into it? We weren't trying to be duplicitous, because there were two different groups of people that, well, three. There was the group of people who absolutely believed it hook, line, and sinker, and they were just completely like locked in, and
Mm,
they were awesome. They were really fun because the comments and the questions would be back and forth, and of course we're kind of playing along. Then there was the group who was like, "This is absolute nonsense. I can't believe you guys are falling for this. This is absolutely you guys are all so gullible. This is ridiculous." And those
mm,
those people, we were kind of like, okay, well, just keep scrolling because we know you're not into it. We don't really appreciate your comments. And then there was, what I liked was kind of the Goldilocks group, which were in the middle, and they were the folks who, they were like the perfect audience, because they knew it was kind of, they knew it wasn't real, but they really enjoyed going along for the ride. And so,
mm,
that was who we played the audience. That's who we kind of developed the show for on YouTube. And and then we kind of, it broke out into TikTok and things like that. And what was really crazy was we were doing this kind of for fun, as
mm,
another kind of creative outlet, and just kind of, again, using the genre to really kind of play with, or playing with the genre within the social media space.
mm,
But because things were going so well, and like, we couldn't believe the numbers that we were getting, we're like, well, what if we try to cultivate this into more of a kind of a storytelling, little more traditional kind of theatrical experience, which borrowing from, the found footage genre, being able to put it together, instead of it being episodic, we put it together as one whole piece of a film. And that's where it all kind of started from, and that's where we kind of evolved out of. But what's interesting is the story of Devin Adams and In Search of, as continues to go. It lives online, and it actually continues to, the story keeps going.
yep. You mentioned the cryptozoology. I think you said. I mean, we've got. 2 and a bit hours from the Loch Ness monster, so, there's a lot of that that can get, brought up around these parts as well, so I've still never seen Nessie, but I wouldn't say no. It's the deepest body of water, so you never know. Something could be hiding in there. I didn't jump in it, it's very cold, so
Yeah, it's very deep. I wouldn't get
yeah,
anywhere near it, man. It creeps me out.
no. No, no. Open bodies of water, no chance, not for
Yeah.
me. Um, when when you develop the story, and I would assume it'd be the same for a lot of filmmakers, they would have the kind of influences. For Tribe, it felt there was a lot of cosmic horror elements to it. Was that something you wanted to lean into? Is that a kind of subgenre that you're a fan of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do,
Hmm.
I feel like, to me, the kind of the cosmic horror aspect of it is again this kind of interdimensional kind of space that we can, we can kind of exist in. And so yeah, there were a lot of influences, and there was also just the concept of
Mm,
like evolution and like instead of extraterrestrials, not meaning visitors from another planet, but this concept of that we actually could have ultra terrestrials, which are other species of humanity that have existed here historically over millions of years. To me, that is just the concept of that is kind of
mm,
terrifying because I find geological time to be very scary. Maybe when you're dealing with millions and millions and millions of years, which is why we were playing around with this idea of what's called the Silurian theory. And we talk about it in the film a little bit, which is this notion that when you're dealing with geological time over millions and millions of years, we don't know what is necessarily what we don't know what has existed before us. Obviously, from we have a
mm,
fossilized record of things, but the truth be told, when you're dealing with millions and millions of years, if there was some form, some culture, some civilization, some sentient being that lived before us that we evolved out of, we might not necessarily have any kind of record of it. That to me, just
mm,
by its nature, is very scary. And so that's we were kind of trying to play around with that a little bit. At first, the idea was okay, well, we'll just kind of they're just creepy creatures that are living kind of in a cave or in the woods, which feels very much kind of like Descent, right? Which is brilliant.
yeah,
You don't get much better than that movie.
mhm,
It's one of the greatest horror movies ever. Um, and so obviously we were like, let's play with that. But then that kind of gets I don't know, I think that gets boring without kind of getting some concept of how or how these things exist, how they are there.
yeah,
And I do think when you're looking at a geological record, that everything is a leap of faith. And so if you consider the fact that there could be a species that lived for millions of years before us, but it still potentially is around, I don't know. It's very scary. It's very much like the ocean. Like what's going on down there, we don't know. And I feel like that just playing with those elements within horror is very scary.
mm. Yeah, as you said, you do talk about that in the movie. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but there's the discussion around the bones of the T-Rex
Yeah,
being found, and he said how many, and they're guessing in the thousands. I think it's maybe 50. He's mentioned that that's the only
yeah,
kind of fossils they found of T-Rex, and yeah, the concept of that time, because it's going to happen at one point for us as well. People looking back, if the planet lasts that long, but that's a whole other thing. But
yeah.
um, yeah, it's a really interesting way to look at it. That and going on to the right, am I going to word this to not give anything away? Let's just say the beings that are in it and the characters, and the did you say celestials? Would you say something along those lines? Maybe I'll just say beings. Sorry, I'm tripping over my own words.
Yeah,
Um, they're very certainly the first ones that we witness are they have a really kind of human-like quality to them. I'll say that. In terms of the design for that and moving forward and developing onto what we later see in the movie as well with sort of creature design. Creature, that's a better word. Um, The How did you come about to that? Because they are both very striking in how they look.
Yeah, that was really all my visual effects guy, Neil Rowe, is amazing, and he's going to hopefully be at the festival actually, which I'm really excited about.
Right.
Seeing him, it was he. We were just kind of going back and forth on what potentially something that has existed for millions of years, what it could potentially look like. And so the idea was at first it started as practical, meaning the idea of having these creatures kind of roaming around kind of the countryside, and we just had actors in these masks, and then we'd give the footage to Neil, and then he'd remove their eyes. He'd kind of give them this kind of weird, kind of otherworldly quality to it, which was super fun
Mm,
because we were kind of working in practical, but then also incorporating some visual effects, which was really cool.
yeah.
And because it's always fun to work in practical. And then by the time we got to the end, the idea was, okay, Neil's going to take this over completely. In the fact that because it made more sense for him to do it in the box, and he did some really cool stuff. But that but what was really fun about that was it kind of was evolving as we were shooting. I mean, look, I know for a lot of filmmakers that's absolutely taboo. Like, you just don't. I mean, a lot of people feel as though, like, once pre-production's done, the film is more or less done. You're just going and you're just shooting what you've already kind of organized and put together. And to me, I think, like, I feel like that whole process has to be much more organic and evolving. You have to bring in people that you trust and you kind of creatively jive with. And that was very much that experience. Like, I felt
Mhm.
like it was, I would share with Neil what I was thinking in my head, and then he would kind of come back with all of these ideas. And some of the ideas were very far removed from what I had, like, assumed it would be. And I think I found myself kind of leaning towards that, like, just because,
Mhm.
I don't know, I always feel as though that creative exchange is just going to lead to better ideas. And most of the time, better ideas are not my ideas. But he was just amazing. He was really, really great. And that experience was um, very, like, what am I trying to say? I feel like the experience was really unique because my relationship with Neil was lived completely online. Like, he lives in Manchester, so we were like,
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool.
So and so we would be sending media back and forth. We'd kind of have these creative exchanges, but we never actually met in person. And I think what is strange about that is I know that post pandemic, that is kind of the way a lot of work is done now.
Mm,
Um, but it was really different for me because coming from a marketing background where you're leading creative teams and you're in a room and you're spitballing and you're coming up with kind of an creative exchange, and you're throwing out ideas, and there's that physical sense of being with somebody. And it was just really interesting to kind of actually produce really good work, but all of it happening kind of in a remote setting and in a remote way. And
yeah.
so I learned a lot through that process. I really did, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool.
Mm. And did you find yourself as the creative and kind of putting your ideas out to other other aspects of the filmmaking? How did you find that? Were you quite open to it? Was it a struggle at first, or was it from the off? Because you've obviously had that production background, and I would imagine potentially working with people who are giving you their sort of creation. Were you quite okay with that, dealing with it?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And you
Yeah.
have to. I absolutely believe you have to. To me, I don't. And again, this comes from you know um, uh, helping run a company with quite a few employees, and a lot of them being really great creative engines. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
really amazing editors and graphic designers and musicians and all this other stuff. And so doing that kind of throughout my career kind of gave me the opportunity once we decided, hey, listen, let's go kind of make our own film. It was very easy to kind of still use those same muscles of kind of being creatively uh, open. You know what I mean? And
Mm,
really
yeah,
allowing other people to be able to give their opinions. And like I said, very I would have to dial things in a little bit, but most of the time it was just a great creative exchange. And I honestly believe that's the way good filmmaking has to happen. I know that the auteur idea of real control and management and like, okay, it has to be done my way and all this other stuff. I mean,
mm,
I don't. There's nothing. I have no issue with that, and I think I really respect a lot of filmmakers that have that approach to it. But I, you know, filmmaking. I mean, it's a social, it's a collaborative art form. So I feel as though the more that you're open to the creative exchange, the better the product is going to be.
mm. Yeah, that's great. Another thing that I found really striking about Tribe was, you've got the quality of the cinematography kind of married with the visual effects. Um, Again, not going spoilers, but near the end when the visual effects maybe get a slight bit heavier for certain scenes over the landscape. Um, that was something that just really stood out to me. And how was it? Obviously, you would have watched it now, getting to see that when you've went through the whole process and getting to see that finished product and just some beautiful shots throughout the movie.
I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, I that's feeling, seeing it kind of come together. It
Mm,
was wonderful. I mean, it was really cool. But the idea of stepping away and into more of a kind of an internal world, we'll call it. Um,
mm,
I felt as though, we were playing with a genre by doing that, and so
yeah,
and I think I don't know. Some people are probably going to really take issue with this, but I think the found footage genre can you can hit a level of fatigue because of it is it's just by its nature it is kind
yeah,
of it is found footage, which means it's going to have a certain level of kind of that shaky camera, iPhone kind of aesthetic, and that's
yeah,
and I that works, and I do think, and certainly within the horror genre, those elements appeal because you're like, oh wait, what am I seeing? What did I see? What's that in the corner? Is that some trick of the eye, or is it I and you look at like the Paranormal Activity franchise. I mean, that just does that brilliantly, actually utilizing
mm,
kind of the camera within certain scares and things like that. And I just love that. But I felt as though at some point in time, if we were to move out of that world, how would that suddenly kind of affect the film? And
mm,
again, like I said, I think for a lot of people, they're going to be like, whoa, time out. This is not right. But to me, I felt as though it was like, well, look, I mean, the beauty of kind of low budget horror is that you can kind of turn things on its head a little bit, and I really do feel like there are, yeah, you can bend the rules, but I think you're supposed to bend the rules. You know what I mean?
mm,
And I understand. I do. I absolutely, and I understand and respect people who are of the mind. No, no, no. You always have to motivate the camera. You always have to know what's going on or why it's there. But I also feel like in some ways, what it can do is it creates it forces you into a box, like, and it's
mm,
like understanding, wait, I have to motivate, where is this coming from, where is this image coming from? And the other problem I see with that sometimes is um and I think some films you can see them trying to push that because it is such a big part of the genre. It's like
mhm,
there's creative ways of being able to communicate that, like whether it be like
yeah,
a camera on a car or a dashboard cam or whatever, or security cameras, or again the screen life, everything kind of living kind of within our computers. All
yeah,
of that kind of works, and all that is really cool. And I feel like that genre and excuse me, that aesthetic feels very real, hyper real. But
Mm,
then the idea is what happens if you kind of wipe that away and just do something that just feels like, okay, now we're in a different world. And so that was kind of that was the idea, was to break away as much as we could.
yeah. Yeah, as you said, we've had found footage, well, since Blair Witch is the big one that everyone knows, and there had been other elements of it even before then. I can't Is it the McPherson tapes? I can't remember the name of it, one from maybe the 80s, potentially. And then coming into the era when you've had your paranormal activities, which then gave it the big boost. So perhaps the genre was maybe a bit oversaturated. So you need to take those risks, don't you? You need to try something that's maybe a bit uncomfortable for a traditional found footage audience,
Yeah.
but that's you're kind of, it's maybe a bit cheesy to say, but being true to your own risk taking as a filmmaker. And I think you get that with Tribe. You get those, you do get the traditional found footage feel to it, but you're also kind of stepping outside that box a wee bit. And it was something that there was a movie a couple of years ago. I don't know if you've will have seen it. It was quite divisive. In fact, it was very divisive. I think it was called The Outwaters. I think that was
Yeah.
filmed in
Yeah.
LA. And that did something kind of different from your movie with Tribe, but it did have elements of stepping away from the traditional, I've got, why are you filming this? Because people have to see it, sort of thing. Like, I think that's even a line in maybe Cloverfield,
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah.
And you're taking those risks and making it something that it's its own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do. The Outwaters I thought was really interesting too, because I think you're right. I think they do blur those lines a little bit. Like it does
Mm,
become almost hallucinatory, which I love. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, we are way out there. And I just think that I really enjoy that. But I also look at, like films like, what is it? Film from 2 years ago, like In a Violent Nature, where I mean, that's not a found footage movie, but it's very much borrowing from that genre where you're just following characters, right? It's you're following the killer, and I know everyone
yeah.
was like, "Wow, it's Friday the 13th, but from the killer's perspective," but that which I think is cool. Don't get me wrong, I think it's really neat. But to me, the magic of that film, aside from the kills, which are incredible, by the way,
Yeah.
but it's just these long scenes where you're just following, and there's no soundtrack. That's just him walking. Like
Yeah.
just by the nature of that, you're
Mm,
you're kind of forced to be in this kind of space where you're like, you don't know necessarily what's going to happen. There's no commentary of what it's just, we're just kind of along for the ride. And I
mm,
think I think that is an example of a film that is trying to bend the genres a little bit and borrowing from here and there to put it together. And I think you're right. The films that do that, I don't know, I really enjoy those. I appreciate the effort, the
mhm.
trying to play around a little bit and bend the rules a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I think you do a great job with Tribe. In terms of the location, for a big chunk of the film, I might be, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it West Coast Mountains? Is that what they're called? Is that
Yeah, yeah,
right? Okay.
it's basically it is. We've got about 60 acres up, and it's East County in San Diego. And but you
Mm,
think of San Diego and you're like, whoa, it's the beautiful coast and all this other stuff. But if you
yeah.
go east, there are these incredible, like, mountain ranges that they're just loaded with these massive granite boulders, and
Mm,
it's an amazing location. And it's kind of, to me, it's haunting because, again, in dealing with that geological time element, which I don't know, it just freaks me out. Like, when you're dealing with time that is almost hard to comprehend, it messes with me. And when you're walking around these locations where you're looking at these boulders that have been there for, like, that's been there for potentially, there, the whole mountain has changed within about a million years, and these boulders just kind of form and they disintegrate out, and then they change their form and shape, and I'm just like, it's haunting. It's really creepy, and it's humbling too. That's the other thing. It's like really cool to be in a location like this where it's like, yeah, you're really not that important in the grand scheme of things.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Aye.
You're in a, you realize like these things, these boulders are larger than like people's homes,
Mm.
and they're just everywhere. And so it gives me it just reminds me that fairly insignificant when it comes to all this stuff. So
Yeah. Gives an epic scale as well, doesn't it? You get that feel when, as you said, it can be quite a terrifying thing to think of if you linger on it too long.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's like
uh,
space.
aye,
Like I don't know.
yeah,
I get
yeah, exactly.
freaked out.
Yeah, I watched something like by Brian Cox the other day, and he was talking about something space based, and apart from being incredibly confusing, it is also incredibly terrifying. Like just all hits you at once. It's an assault on the mind. So you said you're coming over for Grimmfest, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, perfect. And it's Friday the 10th of October at 8:30. So the international premiere as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exciting.
I'm thrilled, and I'm really grateful to be kind of part of the whole kind of Grimmfest
Mm,
experience. It's got a wonderful reputation, and the films that I've seen that have come out of there have been really, I really enjoyed, and I think they curate some really cool stuff. So I'm
mm,
looking forward to it, and any excuse to go to Manchester, man.
yeah. Have you been before? Yeah.
I've never been to Manchester, but I've been to London, and I've been to uh, Scotland, but I'm trying to remember. It wasn't Glasgow. Where on earth was I?
Edinburgh?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
That's
Um,
that's the East Coast. I'm West Coast. That's East Coast.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's the capital. But yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I really love it, and
Mm.
yeah. So yeah, looking forward to going. It should be great.
Yeah. Manchester's a great city. Yeah, we've a great time there. And you know, horror crowds are always the best to be around as well. And from I've been lucky enough to get a few screeners this year, and it's what they've put together is a really strong lineup so far. And um, now that you've had the kind of directorial taste, do you anything lined up in that wheelhouse coming up next
Yeah,
for you?
yeah, I do. Um, I'd like to continue down maybe a little less horror, maybe a little more science fiction. But I've been kind of dabbling with. I'm trying. There's a great book by Clifford D. Samack called Way Station that is just a brilliant book. And I'm trying to see if there's a way I can try to get the rights to something because I've always loved his. He's a great author, and that book in
Mm,
particular, I just think absolutely love. So I'd like to be able to kind of latch into that if I can, but I'm just not quite sure how involved trying to get those rights are going to be. So, but that's the next project. That's what I'm trying to do. So we'll
mm,
see. But it's yeah, I think once you kind of you catch the bug, you're just kind of like you're just looking for
yeah,
excuses to find another project. So
yeah.
let's just see if the money holds out.
Mm, aye, the fun bit. Aye. Well, Dan, thanks very much for your time, and again, thank you again, as I said, for being able to reschedule to today. I'm sure you have a great time in Manchester, and good luck at the screening as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Are you guys going to be there?
I won't be, unfortunately. No, I don't. Most of my annual leave gets used on childcare during the summer holidays, so that's apart from that. No, unfortunately not. I'd love to go. You know, I mentioned it in another chat this week. I'm quite lucky that Glasgow gets a like an offshoot of Fright Fest. So we have in April time. Fright Fest is end of August in London, but we get one in sort of March, April. So I can get to pop along to that, but I've never been to any other festival. I'm just it's on the bucket list, as they say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, well, thanks, guys. I'm grateful for the time and being able to kind of chat with you guys. This is great.